Hey guys, welcome to another Python tutorial for beginners. In today's video, we'll talk about list indexing and slicing, and various different Python commands that we can use with list. So list is one of the most frequently used data type in Python because it serves as a sequence where we can store multiple different elements in our program. And there are many useful features about the list that we'll be talking about in this video. So without further ado, let's get started. So you can think of list as a container that can hold various different data types such as string, integers, as well as different types of objects. List also holds the data in an ordered manner, meaning that the order that you put the data into the list will be maintained. Also, list can hold the duplicate values in the list. And another important thing about the list is that all the elements in a list can be changed, meaning it is mutable. So let me start showing you what I just explained in the code by creating a new list. So I can say list1 square bracket, or you can do list1 equal to list parentheses. So both of the syntax that we have here do the exactly same thing. So it's your preference to use whichever syntax you like to use. So in my case, I'm going to use the square bracket. So by setting the list1 equal to the empty square bracket here means that the list1 will actually hold the list data type. And since we have an empty list here, we can put some value here. So I can say Danny 12, 4.2, another 12, and a nested list. So I can say 1, 2, and string 3. Okay, so as you can see, we have a various different data types. So we have a string, integer, float, and a nested list within a list. So now we have our list ready here. Let's try to learn about how we can actually access each of the element or the portion of the element in the list. So in order for us to access the elements in the list, we can use the indexing and slicing that we have learned in our previous video. So if you need to brush up your memory, you can click the video at the top right corner. So let me show you some examples of slicing and indexing in the list. So we can do a print list1 square bracket colon. So in here, we didn't define any start or the stop positions. So this means that we're going to actually print out everything that we have here. That's what this colon means. So if I print this out, you will see an entire list identical to what you see here. And we can also do print list1 square bracket colon 1. So in here we have the stop index, but we don't have the start index. So it's gonna start from the beginning right here, and then it's gonna stop at the index of 1, which is here. But as you remember, the stop index is exclusive, so it's only gonna print out Danny. So if I print this, you will see Danny here. And we can also try to use both the start and then the stop index. So we can do print list1 square bracket 2 colon 4. So I'm gonna start from the index of 2, which is the 4.2 here, and then we're gonna stop at the index of 4, which is this nested list here. But since this is exclusive, we're only gonna print out the 4.2 and 12 here. So if I print this out, you will see 4.2 and 12. And you can also access the single element in the list by just providing the index of that element. So I can just do print list1 square bracket 2. So I'm pointing this 4.2 here. So if I run this, you will see 4.2. And let's try to use the negative index. So I can do print list1 square bracket -1. So as we learned, -1 indicates the last element in the list. So the negative index starts from the end of the list. So -1, -2, -3, and so on. So if I run this, you will see the nested list that we have, as you see. And we can also use the start and stop using the negative index. So print list1 square bracket -4 colon -1. So what I'm doing here is that I'm gonna start from the index of -4, which is the 12 here, and then I'm gonna stop at the index of -1, but this is exclusive. So this slicing gonna print out the 12, 4.2, and 12. So if we run this, you will see 12, 4.2, and 12. And we can also try to use the stride. So we can do print list1 square bracket 1 colon 5 colon 2. So in here, my start position is 1. So I'm going to start from here. And then I'm going to end at the index of 5, which is here because this is index of 4. And then we're going to jump by 2. So it's going to start from here and jump by 2. So 12 and 12, and we don't have anything else. So if I print this out, then you will see 12 and 12. And finally, we can also try to access an element within the nested list here. So in order for us to do that, we have to first point to this nested list. So I'm gonna write at the top so that we can see print list1 square bracket index of 4, which is the index of this list here. And then we're gonna create another square bracket and then provide the index that you wanna actually slice out. So in my case, I'm gonna slice out this 3 here. So I'm gonna say it's 2 because this 3 has the index of 2 within the nested list that we have here. So if I print this out, then you will see 3 here. Okay, so now we've talked about the list indexing and slicing. Let's try to talk about how we can actually change the value of an element that we have in the list. So in order for us to actually change the value of an element that we have in the list, we have to use the list indexing and slicing that we have just talked about. So let's say that I want to change the value of the 4.2 here. The index of 4.2 is 2 because 0, 1, and 2. So we first have to access that index. So I'm gonna do a list1 square bracket 2. And then I'm gonna set that equal to 5.2. So what we are doing here is just like setting a variable. So we are actually accessing the 4.2 by specifying the index here, and then we set that equal to a new value to assign a new value. And once we've done this, you can just print this out. So print list1, oops. And then if I run this, you will see Danny 12 5.2. So you see a changed value here. And you can also apply the same logic to the portion of the element within a list. So we can do list1 square bracket 2 colon 4. So what I'm doing here is that I'm actually setting the range. So the start position is 2, which is here, and then it's gonna end at here, but this is exclusive, so that our target is 4.2 and 12. And I want to set that equal to another list, and I want to set it as 6.2 and 15. And if I print this out, print list1 and run it. In here, you see 6.2 and 15, so we see a changed value in the 4.2 and 12. And we can also try to change an element that we have in a nested list. So let's try to change the value of 3 here. So list1 square bracket 4, which is the index of the nested list that we have here. And then the index of 3 within the nested list that we have is 2. So another square bracket 2 and set that equal to 4. And if I print the list1 here, and print this out, you will see 1, 2, and 4 here. And for all other print statement, you still see 4 here because we are still manipulating on the same object, meaning that once you change the 4 here in the list 1, or other list 1s that you are manipulating will still have the value of 4 here. And before we move on, let's quickly recap about the index error that we talked about in the string indexing and slicing. So if you try to access the index that does not exist in the list that we have here, so for example, if I say list1 square bracket 7, and the index of 7 does not exist here because the end index has an index of 4. So if I just try to run this, you will see an index error saying the list index out of range. And this is a pretty common error that you may face. So in order for you to actually prevent this kind of error when you program, you always have to keep in mind which index your sequence actually ends at so that you don't actually go outside of the range. So in our last video, we talked about the membership operator, and using the membership operator, we can easily check whether an element actually exists within the list that we have here. So let's say that I want to check whether Danny exists in the list 1. So I can do print Danny in list 1. So I'm using the membership operator called in to check whether Danny exists in the list 1, so which we have here. So if I run this, you're gonna see true because Danny actually do exist here. But if you just try to put some other name like Danny X and run this, you will see false because Danny X does not exist. Then how do you actually check whether 3 exists in the list 1? So let me actually change this to 3 here. And if you run this, you will see first. And then you might be wondering, hey, why is this returning first when I see 3 in the list 1? So Python is actually searching for 3 in the list 1, meaning the outer layer of the list, not inside the nested layer. So in order for you to actually check whether 3 exists in the nested list, you'd actually have to point to the nested list within the outer list that you have here. So in this case, I'm just gonna write a square bracket and point to the nested list, which is 4. And if I run this one more time, you will see true here. And we also talked about the Python's built-in function, and one of them is len. So we can use a len function to check how many elements that we have in the list. So we can simply do print len list1, and if we run this, you will see 5, which is the number of elements that we have in the outer layer of the list 1. So it's not checking the numbers that we have in the nested list. So if you want to actually check how many elements that we have in the nested list, you would have to just do the same thing, just point to 4 and then run it one more time. Then you will see 3 here. So now let's talk about how you can actually delete a single element or the range of elements within a list using the Python keyword del. So if you want to delete a single element, then you can just say del and list 1 and then specify the index that you want to delete. So let's say that I want to delete this one, which has the index of 2, and then let's print this out so that we can see the result and run it. You will see Danny, 12 and 12, so the 4.2 is actually gone because it was deleted from here. And we can also try to delete the range of the elements that we have in the list. So let's say that I want to delete from here to here. So in this case, let me first comment this so that we don't actually duplicate the object. We can do del list 1 square bracket from the beginning, so I'm not going to specify any start index, to the end, which is the index of 4, and this is exclusive. So if I specify 4 here, it's going to delete from Danny to 12. So let me just print this. Print list 1, and then if I run this, then you only see the nested list coming out because everything else was deleted. And let's also try to delete one of the elements in the nested list. So the strategy here is the same as before. You first have to point to the nested list, and then once you actually get there, you actually specify the index of the element that you want to delete within this list. So let me actually do that real quick. So let me put this up and then say del list 1 index of 4 and then another square bracket, and let's say that I want to delete this 2 here, so it has an index of 1. And once you've done that, you can just print this list out one more time and run it. You will see all other elements, but you only see 1 and 3 here, so the 2 is gone. Okay, so now let's try to use the plus operator and multiply operator in the list operations. So list is similar to string in a sense that they both are sequence. So that means that when you use a plus or the multiply operator in the list, it actually behaves very similar to string. So when you use a plus operator between two lists, so it actually combines the two lists into one list. And then if you use the multiply operator, so say the list 1 times 3, then it's gonna replicate all the elements in the list 1 3 times within the single list. So let me show you some examples. So I can do print, let me first create list 2 here. List 2 equals to 5, 6, and 7, and I can do print list 1 plus list 2, and if I print this out, you will see all the elements from the list 1 from here to here, and then you will see all the elements from the list 2 at the end of the list 1. So all the elements in the two lists were combined. And we can also use the multiply operator. So I can do print list 2 times 3, and it's going to replicate the 5, 6, and 7 3 times within a single list. So if I run this, you will see the value here. Okay guys, that's it for this video. So we talked about the list today with the list slicing and indexing, and also went through a few Python built-in functions and keywords for list operations. I hope that this video was helpful, and if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to comment down below. And if you haven't already subscribed, please click the subscribe and like button. Thank you so much for watching, and hope to see you in next videos.